Hundreds of local teachers rally in Lansing, protesting Governor Snyder's sweeping new plan to overhaul Detroit's failing school system. So many teachers took part today, DPS was forced to cancel classes at 18 schools. The governor's plan to split the district in two.
Here's how it works. He wants to create a new school system to handle education, and then he wants the old DPS to pay off its debt. Fox News' Taryn Asher is on the story right now. Taryn?
You know, we asked Governor Snyder time and time again, is this a bailout? He said no. In fact, he compared this plan to what the grand bargain did for the city of Detroit. But not everyone is convinced it is the best plan, and it's the best for the kids at Detroit Public Schools.
This is a plan to destroy the schools, whether Snyder is saying it explicitly.
And teachers like Nicole Conaway proved that point by calling in sick, which led to the closing of 18 Detroit schools Thursday. Instead, hundreds of Detroit teachers from here to the Capitol decided to protest Governor Rick Snyder's plan to turn around debt-ridden DPS.
Having schools closed today to go protest, I'm not sure how that's helping the kids.
During a press conference, Snyder unveiled the plan, which would essentially split DPS into two districts, a newly created City of Detroit Education District, which will operate the schools under a 7-member school board of Detroit residents, appointed by Mayor Duggan and the governor. It would collect the per-pupil funding and focus on the education of children. The existing DPS would be under the direction of the state's emergency manager and current school board, with the sole purpose of collecting $72 million generated annually from the millage and pay down the district's $283 million debt.
We have an operating debt problem to solve, and the most important thing is we have an issue about getting a better education to the kids of Detroit.
Both districts would be overseen by a financial review board, a Detroit Education Commission focusing on enrollment, and an education manager who would oversee academic performance. But critics, including Steve Kahn, president of Detroit's Federation of Teachers, calls the plan a sham, claiming the state would just be collecting tax money from the poor to pay off debt created by the state, and then robbing other districts, which could lose $50 per student in funding.
This is wrong. It's unconscionable what they've done. They try to strip the schools dry of their money, take the money for their rich corporate friends, and the people of Detroit aren't having it, and the teachers are leading the charge now, saying, come with us and fight back.
If you look at the debt the school district actually owes, in many respects, most of those obligations come back to being a state obligation. So in ways, this is debt that we're backing up or we owe in some fashion, and so we're just being more proactive to pay it.
With 2/3 of Detroit students not proficient in reading, among other subjects, Snyder says the district has reached a crisis point. Blame placed so many places: cuts, corruption, lack of power by a school board, lack of 100,000 students over the last decade, and multiple emergency managers.
Obviously hasn't worked up until this point. Why keep the emergency manager?
Well, it's still an emergency. And so, again, they don't meet the criteria to leave that status. And so I think it's appropriate to have an emergency manager, and I think Darnell's doing a good job.
Layer of bureaucracy on top of bureaucracy on top of bureaucracy.
Now, if all goes according to plan, Governor Snyder, the debt should be paid off in around 10 years. Now, a lot of changes in state law will have to take place. He plans to introduce the legislation in a couple of weeks. Lawmakers, he hopes to have it approved by the fall and then implemented, at least partially, by July 2016. We're live on Detroit's West Side. Taryn Asher, Fox 2 News. Back to you.
And Taryn, what does Detroit Mayor Mike Duggan have to say about the plan?
You know, we asked Governor Snyder about that, and he said he wouldn't speak for the mayor, but he said that they did have some dialogue, but he really wasn't clear on which way he stood on this. We have reached out to the mayor. We are waiting to hear back. He has been on meetings, but from what we've been told, his cooperation is really going to be key in this plan because he, too, would have to appoint people to make it work. So, but of course, we've heard in the past he hasn't been for always emergency managers, so it'll be interesting to get his response on this because it is a lot of control over Detroit Public Schools. Back to you.
And it is a pressing issue. Taryn Asher, thanks for the live report.